morning. Happy Tuesday. I'm going to call Tuesdays Testimony Tuesday. Yeah, I'm going to do something different. We're going to get to these steps, but I would like to share one of my testimonies every Tuesday just to inspire and let you know what the Lord has done for me in my life. And if you have a testimony, I'll ask you to drop it in the comments below if you view this video, because you never know what might reach someone or help someone. Okay, so I'm gonna get right into it. It was the year of 2013, towards the end of the year, and I was pregnant with my fourth child, my youngest daughter, who will be 12 her birthday this year. And I was in this marriage, this abusive marriage, and I was really broken and hurt and going through a lot of stuff. There was a lot of trauma that had taken place, and there was a incident that went down that led me to leave, get out. And I say, right before I gave birth, I remember, because I had to stay with my sister. I didn't have nowhere to go. I was bouncing from my sister's house to my mother's house, with my 3 children at the time, pregnant with my fourth and about to give birth. And I remember my sister, who stands about 5 feet. Okay, I'm 5'10", just for reference. And I was big. I was big and pregnant and weighed about, at the time, maybe like 230 pounds or more. And she cradled me, like she picked me up and she cradled me like a baby in her arms. And I remember crying and saying, I can't do this. I don't want to live. I can't make it through this, because of everything that was going on and everything that was coming at me and all that I had been through. And she said, Jai, yes, you can. Yes, you can. She said, God can do it for you. God's going to get you through. And she began to minister to me. And she just held me while I wept in her arms, right? So about maybe a couple weeks later, I wound up giving birth. 2 weeks after my baby's born, I find myself at my protection from abuse hearing, and I'm getting arrested because there was a lie that was told in another county on me. So they came and they arrested me at my PFA hearing, right? Oh, but God. So I'm traumatized. I'm already traumatized, but I'm really traumatized now, right? Because I'm like, you never got a detention. How did you end up behind bars? Like, Lord, what is going on? Like, these are my thoughts, but I will say, I grew up in church underneath my grandmother's ministry and my parents' ministry. They're pastors, and, I always known of God, right? But I never had an intimate relationship with God for myself. So, I knew him, but I didn't know him, if that makes sense. I didn't know his voice. I didn't talk to him or commune with him like daily, other than running to him when I felt like I was in trouble, or, I needed a way out, or, I didn't know him to be someone I could talk to on the daily and that I could hear his voice back. So I'm just like, all right, how did you end up here? But just to speed up this, through it all, God got me through that. And there was years I had to go in and out of courts for different things with, protecting my children and, fighting for them, and also trying to maintain my mental health, right? And so I started leaning on things like alcohol and smoking weed, and I would pop a perk here and there just to numb the pain. And I was trying to escape what was going on the inside of me by leaning towards these vices. And so I remember my sister caught me sparking up one day. like I said, my sister has always been a prophetic voice in my life. She's always prayed for me, always covered me, always overseen me, even as a little young girl and a baby. So she caught me sparking up one day and she looked at me and it was silent. We just locked eyes. And she walked away. About maybe a couple weeks after that, I was about to get high with my boyfriend at the time, which is now my husband now. And we have an amazing testimony together and individually too of how we got back together and how both of us came to Christ. But I said to him, I said, I don't want to smoke today. And he said, why? I said, I don't have a desire, right? He said, okay, well, I'm still going to do it, right? And so I wound up doing it anyway. I was like, I'm just going to do it anyway. And let me tell you, it was weed. It was just weed. But it was something about that time where I just prayed and I said, Lord, if you bring me down from this high, I will never touch this again. I don't want to feel like this. It was like the worst anxiety, like just the worst feeling, right? Because God had told me not to do it. But I didn't know I was hearing his voice. So once I came down from that high, I began to fight, within myself. There was like a turmoil going on within me, from different spirits who had me bound for years. They, were fighting up against me, and I didn't understand what was going on, but come to find out, that encounter with my sister when we locked eyes, she was like, I prayed for you. I went on a fast and I prayed, girl. The prayers of the righteous availeth much. Okay? My sister was praying for me and she was breaking things off of my life that had me bound in the spirit, and I had no idea. But God had called her to intercede on my behalf. So, here is one day I'm asleep and I'm going to speed this up, and you can press to hit, speed this up when you listen to it. But I'm waking up and I'd say to my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, I say, I didn't dream anything. I said, something is weird, right? And I remember before I stopped dreaming, let me just backtrack a little bit. I did have a dream. In this dream, I seen Jesus coming down on a cloud, right? I seen an angel blow a horn. I seen him coming down the cloud. And I was so far away from him, but I was so scared, right, when I seen him, because I couldn't fathom what I was seeing. And he had abs. And his eyes were like a blue flame of fire. And everybody was bowed down on their knees. And when he opened his mouth to speak, a sword came out. And I remember being staring out a door frame, looking. And I woke up out of that dream, and I remember I told my mom, I said, oh, the end of the world, he about to come. And she looked at me and she said, you better hope he just not coming for you. And I said, right? So speed up. I had that dream, and then I don't dream no more after that. I said, something is wrong, right? And I said it to my boyfriend at the time, who was my husband. And I said, something is wrong. I'm not dreaming. He's like, you tripping. Ain't nothing wrong. I remember looking in the mirror at myself. My mother had this mirror on the wall in her basement. I remember standing in front of it, and I remember just being so pale in color. And I was like, I'm dying. Like, I knew I died spiritually, and I felt myself leaving out. And that's when I said, God, I repent of everything that I know that I've been doing wrong, living in sin. I'm going to turn away from it, because I don't want to leave out of here this way. If I'm leaving out of here, I want to leave out of here right. And then that's when the Spirit of the Lord spoke to me, and I heard his voice loud and clear. And he said, Japhia, yep, he called me by my name. He said, I put you here for purpose. And if you're not going to fulfill the purpose I placed you here for, there's no purpose of you being here. And the tears began to flow down my face. And I couldn't say anything. I just began to weep. And I couldn't believe that God heard me. He heard my cry. He responded. And he delivered me that night. And he set me free. That's my testimony. What's yours? God bless. Have a wonderful day.